Hi, I'm Peter Cowan, the Bee Whisperer, here at the Good Shepherd Food Bank again. It's been a bit over a week since we took the last bit of honey off here, and 2 to 3 weeks since I put most of the remaining honey supers on there. So now we should get a good idea just what the honey flow is doing right now and where we're likely to be in a couple of weeks' time when we'll be taking, well, maybe 3 weeks when we take most of these supers off. But we'll see. It all depends on what we're seeing in the boxes. So again, we've got plenty of scout bees at the entrances here. If you wanted to show here, we've got a lot of clustering at the entrance. It has been very humid up until today, and the humidity is starting to go down today. So we still have lots of bearding, very significant bearding here. But as the weather dries, we should see less and less of it. What they do when they're bearding like this is they're clearing a clear passageway for air to go in and out of in and out of the hive. And by removing bees from the frames and putting them outside and clustering down here and up here, they can make a much better passageway for air to move up through the hive, which helps both to cure the honey and regulate the temperature in the hive, because the humidity has been very high. You see this all the time in high humidity in a hive that has a lot of bees, and lots of people get worried about this. Is it a sign of swarming? Yes, it can be a sign of swarming. It's not specifically a sign of swarming. What it is almost always a sign of high humidity. You will get bearding for other reasons too. High density of bees in the hive, which could be a sign of swarming, so it is useful to have a look. But if this coincides with high humidity, your bearding is a characteristic of humidity and not necessarily any prelude to swarming. What you'll notice if there's a honey flow on, once the bees get moving during the daytime, all these bees are gone, but they're clustering again by 5 or 6 in the evening. And then when the flowers are producing nectar, scout bees tell these bees there's nectar to be collected, and all the field bees are out, and you have no bearding on the front. When you've got bearding right through the day, you can have that on it, like say a rainy day where they just don't go out to fly, so nothing's changed, so they're staying there. But if it's not high humidity, if it's during the daytime on a sunny day and they're still bearding like this, you've got no honey flow on. So this is also a potential sign of real dearth in the area if they're like this during the middle of the warm sunny day. Generally speaking, you're going to see this in mornings and evenings, and that's associated with high humidity. And now that the humidity is going down, I wouldn't expect to see a significant like this tomorrow, for example. But it's in a lot of the hives here, and it's the higher the density of bees in the hive, the bigger the bearding that's taking place. Not all of them are doing much bearding, but clearly a lot of bees in that colony. So let's open up and see what the flow of nectar has been like. We'll start with the outside edge here. All of the boxes on the top were empty or near empty no more than 3 weeks ago. There's plenty of bees. And again, unlike in the spring, if there's a honey flow in the spring, we would see white. This time of year, if we see nectar flow, it's going to be more yellow, because the wax gets totally covered with yellow pollen, particularly from goldenrod. Now this was a frame that had yet to be built, but they're doing some comb drawing, and the comb that is drawn is full of nectar, or honey, and they're just starting to cap this as well. And so whilst there might be a good honey flow on in the fall, they're not so likely to draw the comb out. They'll draw comb beautifully in the spring, but in the fall they're less good at drawing comb out. And the comb is not being drawn out very far here, but it's already getting capped. They're not drawing this quite so well, but we will see progress on that next year when that comb goes back in a hive here. So these supers can't fill up that much. There's a bit of space for some honey here, and a bit of space here, an undrawn comb here, totally undrawn here, partially built comb here, and this doesn't look like it's got much in, so they're not absolutely bursting. This is just an old comb, but they're not really filling it up too much. So this hive is on the borderline as to whether I'd put more room on it. I'm going to have a look at the super below. That'll give me a better idea. Actually, this might be one of the brood chambers that I didn't take off. Former brood chambers. They made the first honey super, of course. There's still room. I don't think there's a real danger of this hive being too crowded, so we'll probably not put a super on this one. There's a bit of room. This is half full of honey, but about a third full of undrawn comb. So this was a deep super that was added to give them room. Probably a week to 2 weeks ago. This frame is about 1/3 full of honey, and they're not drawing out the foundation I've got in here, but they are slowly filling this up. But it's coming along. If we're lucky, they'll fill that super up before it's time to take everything off. Have a look at this one. There's quite a variation between hives because of the variation in strength of colonies, even though we initially tried to balance this up a bit. There's a significant variation between the populations in my colonies, which I try not to do. Next year maybe I'll be a bit better at it. There's a smoker just by the... When you've got a really good honey flow on, they can fill one of these supers up in a week, even less. But right now, it's been on for a while, and there's still plenty of room in here. They're putting a bit of honey in here, but this is still mostly empty. Let's come along and have a look at these. So I think the room we gave them was enough so far. I see a bit of bridging here, which is always good. Bridging comb means they're building comb. This was a deep. There's a fair amount of honey in it. I don't think it was one that we left behind. There's quite a bit of honey in there. We'll put a super on this one. Okay, so we'll put that to one side. Thank you. Look at all those bees. Now, one thing I've noticed in this yard, I don't smell the goldenrod curing. This particular yard may not be that blessed with lots and lots of goldenrod like some of the other yards are. Having said that, I can certainly see plenty of yellow in there. So they're certainly getting involved with the goldenrod. Thank you. Yeah, I just realised I had my back to it. And this hive is filling up with honey nicely. I can see capped honey along there. This frame is half capped honey. This is terrific. So this is going to need another super. So it's amazing how much it will vary from colony to colony, but certainly ready for another super in this one. That's good. This is filling up with honey, and from what I can see here, the frames of foundation that I put in around them are getting drawn.
Are we taking the tape off?
Sure. This super is a little way to go. They're less full over here, so this should probably wait just a bit longer before I put another honey super on. These two got the honey supers. Let's see what this one's like. This had the mean brood transferred to it. Still think there's room in there. Plenty of room in this one still. I'm looking down between the frames, looking for the drawn out comb, looking to see if the comb has been extended out, which is a sign that they're filling them up. And if they have been extended out, then I'm looking down a little bit deeper into the frames to see just how much room there is. Rather than lifting the super off, just taking a frame maybe 2/3 of the way in, or 1/3 of the way in. Plenty of room here. They've been building, but there's plenty of room for storage there. You always get the impression that the bees are mean when you're working your bees at 9 in the morning. We're just after 9 in the morning here right now. They're so full of field bees in the hive. No shortage of field bees in this hive. There's honey, but only maybe a third full, and this should be one of the most full frames, so we're not going to change this one. I suspect that the hives that we're actually needing to put honey supers on were the ones where we took the honey off first and we put a honey super on 3 weeks ago, and these were only put on last week. So filling them up at a rate of about a super every 3 weeks as opposed to a super a week, which is better than the average fall we've been having in the last 5 or 6 years, but not outstanding by any means, at least at this location. And it is amazing just how much it varies from one location to another. My yard on the other side of Hamden, which is deeper in the woods, hardly stored any honey there. These are storing honey, but not at a tremendous rate. Let's say maybe a third of a super a week or so. So they're making progress, which means it makes for them to be good and healthy. It's great in the fall if you've got a honey flow in the fall, because as well as you collecting some honey, it's also going to have good brood care and nutrition at that time. And having good brood nutrition in the fall is critical to getting your bees healthy, having a healthy hive for the winter. You can see that they're building the comb out a bit and storing some honey, but I can also see there's plenty of room there. Having good nutrition in the fall is one of the keys to having bees survive the winter well. I had one yard that I didn't have a good honey flow in last fall, and that one really struggled in the winter. That's the one I lost most bees on in the winter time. Even though I fed them with sugar syrup, with hindsight, maybe pollen patties and feeding them with sugar syrup earlier on may have been what I could have done better. Plenty of bees. I seem to recall this was definitely one I took the honey super off last week, so less than a week ago. And this is very light, there's not much on here at all, so there's plenty of work for us to fill it, but the honey flow seems to be subsiding in this area. I would say, if anything, the honey flow is subsiding in this area. I'd say there's not a great deal of goldenrod around here, but the sweet clover is finished. There's meadows over there with a bit of clover in. That's really subsiding. And so this is not a yard with lots of goldenrod honey. Those are more like my winterport yards. And last year those winterport yards did very well, as did my Monroe yard. So they had a good deal of goldenrod and asters. Yeah, very light. Virtually no weight to this at all. So they're probably putting honey down here, but they're not. There's bees up here, and they're cleaning up the frames and they're getting everything ready here, but not a great deal of honey up here, if at all. So where I know it's been a super that was only put on last week, and I know that the weather has been good for nectar collecting, this is a sign telling me that the honey flow in this area could be coming to an end. I should probably come around here and see if the bees are still clustered come around here and see if the bees are still clustered on the front of the hive during the daytime. That would also tell me, but from everywhere that I know a super went on a week ago, which was totally empty, I'm not seeing honey in that super. If there was a strong flow, there would have been some honey. So as I say, the hives that were showing plenty of honey in the top, they were ones that had their honey super on about 2, maybe 3 weeks ago, in the early part of this flow. Yeah, another one just about empty up here. Well, that would be sad if the honey flow did come to an end now. But this is a new yard for me, so I don't know what to expect from one season to the next. I can make a good guess by looking at the surrounding geography and flora. This is an older super. I can see honey up here. Yeah, there's honey here. Let's put another super on this one, just in case. I mean, there's always a chance that these bees are finding food that the other bees are not. But I don't really think so. I suspect that that super will be empty when we come back to it next week. This hive had a lot of supers on it. We took a few off last week. We've got plenty of work to do here. Take this along with us down there. So I suspect that the honey flow is coming to an end in this part of Hampden. As I say, there's not an enormous amount of goldenrod. There is some, and I'm sure they're making use of that. There's not an enormous amount of asters, and they'll be making use of that. But we'll see. We've had some more rain. It has been a little bit dry recently. We're going to get the remnants of Ida this week, so you never know, a bit more rain may help those asters along. But for now, I think that we've seen the bulk of the honey flow for this particular yard, and we'll be watching carefully to see when's the time to take our honey supers off so that we can start getting them ready for winter. I'm Peter Cowan, the Bee Whisperer. See you next time.